Are you sure? That's what he said to me. That's right. He was talking to me about the way I introduced this radio program. He said, are you really sure? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you usually begin by saying, ladies and gentlemen and friends. I said, are you sure that they are ladies and gentlemen? Are you sure that they are your friends? Well, that's a good question. Ladies and gentlemen. That may be a strange term. And maybe they aren't my friends. Maybe they're just acquaintances or guys or gals. Or, as someone once said, just, hey guys. Let's talk a little bit about that. Just because right now, in this age of a lot of chaos and incivility to one another, maybe we need to see if we can recapture just some old school, old-fashioned ideas that just might serve us well in this day and in this age and on the stage of life and business today. My name is Stan Houston. The program is Interesting Ideas so that you can make your mark in the marketplace today. That's the program, and it begins right now. Okay, here we go. Here are some terms that go back a few years, and they're different today. When a man, and again, this is part of the problem, it was almost always a man, was commissioned as an officer in the armed forces. The expression was that he was to put himself, first of all, he was an officer and a gentleman. That's right. That's kind of saying, well, you know, maybe some of the enlisted dudes or the enlisted men or the people who don't have the officer rank, well, they probably don't have the class and perhaps the manners of a gentleman. So you were an officer and a gentleman. Well, we don't hear that much anymore. First of all, a lot of the women are now officers, and I don't know if they're ever called officers and a lady. But there we go. You don't hear that very often anymore. It was oftentimes said that he or she, oh no, not she usually, and again, that's part of the problem, that he was a gentleman scholar. Right, that not only was he a scholar, a man of thinking and teaching and research, a professor, perhaps, he was a gentleman and a scholar. Those are kind of terms that we've kind of gotten away from, describing somebody in terms of the work they do and the life they live, and attaching it to a term like gentleman. As I've often said, is when I use that term, I'm saying that if it's not a description, at least it's an aspiration. It's something we're trying to be. As if the term gentleman and lady, which of course is not unisex at all. It's very much gender, sex-based. And that maybe shouldn't be used anymore. And I have a little bit of a, you know, an old-fashioned cringe when a very nice and very wonderful young pastor just talked to the congregation and said, hey, guys. Well, I understand where that's coming from, but I have to admit that, hey, guys, to those of us who were sitting there, it just didn't ring right. And if nothing else, it wasn't that they were being, you know, wrong or bad. It just caused a little bit of a distraction in my thinking. Well, today, very simply, on this Wednesday, I would like to just simply ask, is there a way that we can begin to see if we can have a sense of what it might mean today to be ladies and gentlemen. That's the program. And after that rather lengthy introduction, we're going to get to the business. Well, first of all, let's go back to some old-fashioned stereotypes. If that term gentleman means anything to you, when you hear that word, what comes to mind? Well, first of all, does the appearance come to mind? All right? Just ask yourself now. I'm just asking. Does the kind of behavior come to mind? Does the way they greet you or the way they introduce themselves come to mind? What about the way they dress? As also a part of their appearance. Does that have anything that comes to mind? And of course, now let's flip it over. A lady. All right. Well, does that bring something to mind? Now, some of the people, younger people, and it's hard to believe that we're that old, but my wife, who's not an old woman, very modern in much of the sense, people are surprised when she tells them that back when she was in high school, the girls were not allowed to wear slacks to school unless it was a certain degree below zero. And they actually had to listen to the radio station to find out the weather, because if it wasn't 20 below or something like that, then the young women, the ladies, were to not dress in pants. Yeah, that was a reality. And later in college, at even the University of Minnesota, there was a dress code for the dining hall, both for the ladies and gentlemen. Now, of course, some people are listening to this and saying, well, how long ago was that? Well, that was very much the way it was until somewhat later in the 1960s. Some of those things began to fall away. And of course, the thing today is, what do you wear to the office? How do you dress? As someone once put it out there in a world-famous book, How to Dress for Success. And we oftentimes framed it differently and said how to dress for leadership, and then tried to help understand that that might be important, because here was a reality. I've taught this for years. Image is not everything, for sure. But let me assure you that in most situations, it is the first thing. Image is not everything, certainly. Cute is not better than character, you know. Substance is far superior to style. You know, all of those things are true. But what does it mean to be a gentleman? And what does it mean to be a lady? And what difference does it make, or could it make, in how well we are living our lives? I just want you to think about that on Wednesday, because I would like to talk about a couple things that are related to this. First of all, one of my programs I'm looking forward to on the television. Now, that's hardly true of anything for me. I don't watch that much television, but I am looking forward to a program, and here's the name of it. It's about a gentleman lawman. That's right, a gentleman lawman, and his name was Bass Reeves. Bassreeves. And in some cases, it is believed by some people that he was the real example of that television character, that radio character of the Old West, the Lone Ranger, with his friend Tonto. And one of the things that is quite true about many of us are my age and stage is that there were a number of people who were put forward as possible role models, that if you were going to grow up and turn from a boy into a man, well, here's an example of what a man should be. If you are going to grow up from being a girl, not necessarily to a woman, that term is, of course, true, but a lady, here's a model for you. All of these things are of times past. But part of what we oftentimes discover is that the people of the past were not so passed out as we think, that there are some things that are good and traditional and very, very powerful from things that we may have learned in the past. And as one of my friends pointed out as a historian, some of it goes back to the Civil War, where it actually changed when the South, supposedly where, ladies and gentlemen were thought to be like, certainly that was part of the mythos, maybe even the legend, that what happened is that when General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant, there was a story of how they did that that might be very symptomatic of our times. Well, I'd love to continue that conversation, and I'm actually going to do it on Friday, and I'm going to do it on the television, so I can begin to put a little more energy and performance into it. So, think about it. Ladies and gentlemen, what does that mean, and what could it mean? What about Bass Reeves? I'm eager to tell you that story, and why don't you look it up before I even tell you the story? You'll be fascinated by it. I look forward to that story. And then simply ask yourselves, the world is in such a mess, and there's very little that many of us, almost any of us, can do about it right now. However, part of the way we survive and thrive in difficult times is learning something about relationships of manners and kindness and awareness. And of course, perhaps maybe that dear, dear quality of not only treating others as you wish, but perhaps treating others better than you would expect. That might be the mark of a gentleman. I'm Stan Houston. I'm done for today. I can probably be helpful to you in some way. So why don't you start a conversation and say, Stan, you're a broadcaster, you're a business performance coach. You are one who has actually given great advice in sales and marketing, and I could use some help in all of those. Well, reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com. And one of the best ways to be thoughtful and admired and respected is that you are a person who has interesting and helpful and useful and inspirational ideas. Why don't you do a little work on that this week for this coming new year? Take care. We'll see you again soon. Behind the microphone or in front of the camera, or maybe both. Bye for now.